Important action going on today on the Hill. The nation's top intelligence officials are there. They're giving an update on worldwide threats against the United States. The new fear is terrorists going overseas, training with foreign fighters, then coming back here to strike at the homeland. Greg Palcott is live on this from London for us. So how serious is this, and what are they revealing here, Greg?
Very serious, Martha. U.S. intelligence chief James Clapper saying that Syria is becoming a huge magnet for extremists. We've been looking into the same topic. We find the number is growing every day. Young Muslims going from U.S. and Western countries to fight alongside al-Qaeda-linked groups in Syria against Assad. The latest total from an expert here who keeps the best track on these things and others we've been speaking to, something like 70 individuals have come from the United States, nearly 2,000 from Europe. It is closer by. There are closer links. The fear of authorities, as you note, when they come back, what they will do. People like a fellow said to go by the name of Abu Dujana al-Amriki. Experts say he is from the U.S., and in his propaganda video, he says he wants to kill all infidels, not just those in Syria, but Americans as well. He, like many of these young jihadis, are using social media to get out the message. In his case, YouTube, but also Twitter and Facebook as well, Martha.
So what's being done?
Well, we've been speaking to authorities here in Western Europe, and they say they're being very proactive. They're being very cooperative with their information, sharing the information to find out where these people are coming from and going to. Now, for example, here in the UK, anybody coming back from Syria to this country can be stopped at the airport, can be thrown into prison. Their citizenship can be taken away. Just in January, 16 were blocked in this way. This is very important for the U.S. as well. EU passport holders have an easier time getting to the U.S., to the avowed target of some of these terrorists. Also, authorities have a few other things, Martha, in their favor. One thing, there is infighting between the groups. Al-Qaeda just yesterday severing ties with one of the main militant groups. And to be blunt about it, according to the experts, these jihadis are dying on the battlefield as well. 23 Brits have died in the past couple of years. And also that American, by the way, that I mentioned earlier, he died as well, according to reports, killed in the town of Hamra about 2 months ago. Back to you.
Well, this is when you hope that the terror watch list works, right? And that the N.S.A. surveillance is also working. So we will see. Greg, thank you very much.
Russia is promising that Syria's government will take part in the second round of peace talks with the opposition. That comes as lawmakers in the U.S. get a taste of just how dangerous the Syrian conflict might be for the homeland.
We are concerned about the use of Syrian territory by the al-Qaeda organization to recruit individuals and develop the capability to be able not just to carry out attacks inside of Syria, but also to use Syria as a launching pad.
Tonight, senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott digs deeper into the issue of Syria importing extremism and exporting terror.
It's called by officials a huge magnet for extremists. The uprising in Syria against Bashar al-Assad has become a battleground for Islamist groups with links to al-Qaeda, attracting jihadists around the world, including this man, Abu Dujana al-Amriki. Experts say he's from the U.S., and in this propaganda video, he says he wants to defy all infidels, including Americans. According to experts, he's one of 70 Americans in Syria. The numbers are even bigger from nearby Europe. 412 from France, 366 UK, 300 Belgium, 240 from Germany.
I believe these guys will ultimately pose potentially quite a big threat, yes.
Blowback from battle-hardened jihadis returning from Syria has Western officials on high alert. Nowhere more than in the UK, where homegrown terrorists killed 52 in the 2005 London transport blasts. Militants from the UK and elsewhere in Europe with U.S.-friendly EU passports are a real threat to America, too. Nigel Inkster was UK's counterterrorism chief at the time of the 9/11 attacks.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time this had happened, would it? After all, 9/11 was planned out of Hamburg.
Using Europe as a base.
Yeah, exactly.
Fighters returning from Syria to the UK, regardless of claimed intentions, can be arrested. Citizenships yanked. 16 were blocked in January. Authorities are also counting on infighting between militants. Ayman al-Zawahiri just announced al-Qaeda is cutting ties with one group for being too extreme.
The ambiguities intellectually, morally, of being a foreign fighter in this conflict are becoming slightly harder on the ground.
One more thing working in the authorities' favor, some of these jihadis never get home. Over 20 Britons have been killed in Syria, along with, reportedly, the American we showed you. He is said to have died shortly after making the video. Shannon.
Thank you, Greg.
Well, right now, serious new concerns about attacks on America launched from Syria. The LA Times reporting that at least 50 Americans have joined a mix of extremist groups fighting to overthrow President Assad in Syria. This as the directors of national intelligence and the CIA tell Congress that these groups also pose a significant threat right here at home.
Looking back over my more than half a century in intelligence, I've not experienced a time when we have been beset by more crises and threats around the globe.
Do you believe that that ungoverned space presents a real threat to the United States of America via al-Qaeda operations or the West in general?
I do.
I'm sorry?
I do.
Ambassador John Bolton is a Fox News contributor and former U.S. ambassador to the UN. He's also a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. So some stark, bleak assessment of what's going on in Syria and what it might mean to us on American soil, Ambassador. I guess the question is, what are we doing about it?
Well, I think that the threat is very real. This number of 50 Americans working with terrorists may be a smaller number. It may grow over time. And it raises, I think, a very important point here. In the midst of this contentious debate we've had about N.S.A. intercepts over the past year since Edward Snowden released this highly sensitive information. This, to me, is the perfect case of what the N.S.A. programs that have been so controversial are doing. So you have 50 American citizens, unquestioned they're American citizens, working with al-Qaeda in Syria. To me, that makes them terrorists. Now, don't we want to know who those terrorists are talking to in the United States? You better believe it. For preventing future terrorist attacks, this is the paradigm case of what the N.S.A.'s metadata program and the other things we've been discussing are set up to find. I sure want to know who they're talking to. Are they talking to the same people? What other information are we going to find out about this to keep us safe in the future?
And so you're making the case that these N.S.A. programs are ideal to make sure that the surveillance is happening on these individuals so we can track them in case they come back to the United States or they're colluding in some way with someone here at home.
Exactly. Now, before the terrorist attacks take place. So, for example, if you have one or more of these 50 individuals continuously calling the same number, I'd like to know who that number is. I'd like to know what that number is calling, what other numbers they're calling. Some cases under the N.S.A. program, you need a warrant to go further to get wiretaps of the individual involved. But this is what the metadata program is all about. We're not going to go into Syria and get their cell phones and put taps on them there. But if we can find out, if we can find numbers coming out of Syria, coming back into the United States, this is part of the effort that we should be undertaking to find out the potential for future attacks in this country. I mean, I can't think of a better category of people whose calls I'd like to know more about than these 50 Americans fighting with al-Qaeda in Syria.
In the meantime, the situation inside Syria is creating this environment that our nation's top intelligence officers are saying provides potentially a launching pad for organizations or for attacks on American soil. Is there anything more we should be doing on the ground there in Syria at this time, now nearly 3 years in, to change that?
Well, I think we should be trying to do more on the ground in Syria to find out about these people, but I'm not sure what the United States is capable of doing in what is now a three-way civil war against the Assad regime, against the al-Qaeda terrorists and others, and against the other opposition forces, many of which are Muslim Brotherhood. And let's be clear, it's not confined to Syria. Many of the al-Qaeda terrorists are also fighting, or certainly working closely with, al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is opposing the al-Maliki regime. And it's part, I'm afraid, of the general descent into chaos of the Middle East as a whole, a descent that certainly we didn't start and we can't stop, but which you can certainly say a declining American influence there is allowing conditions to grow much worse.
The question, of course, is it too far gone, which is a question we can't answer today because we're going to have to run. Ambassador, it's always great to have you. Look forward to tackling that with you, though, in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, John.